If I could just have your attention, I want to thank everybody for coming today. We're thrilled to have you. Jill Stein, Green Party presidential candidate here in our little town of Sarasota. Jill is going to make a few remarks, and then she'll be taking your questions. So thank you very much for coming, everybody.
Yes, thank you. So first, just a big thank you to Mark and Tracy and Jenna and Ellen for all their work putting together today's event, and a big thank you to all of you supporters who came out for this meet and greet, and thank you to the press for coming out. It's really an honor to be here. Florida in so many ways is really on the front lines of the struggle for a sustainable economy, for an environment and a climate that we can live in into the future. Florida's economy is so tied in with the tourist industry, with preserving the incredible beauty of the natural world that Florida is so much a part of here, being really right, a peninsula surrounded by the wild ocean and the incredible, magnificent ecosystems in Florida. With the recent sinkhole collapsing this pollution, hundreds of millions of gallons of toxic waste into the aquifer, supplying the drinking water for Florida. Florida is very much on the front lines of the whole issue of pollution and water, and having an economy that actually preserves a world that we can live in. So this is a very active struggle on that front, and certainly with the recent data suggesting that sea level rise could only be decades away, where we see as much as 9-10 feet, according to the most recent studies done by Jim Hansen, who has not been wrong yet, the foremost scientist of climate science. So, you can almost feel that being here in Florida, I have to say. You really get a sense of how very much people feel to really be at the front line of this struggle for a climate that we can live in and for an economy that can preserve that climate, not just for the environment, but for the people and for the economy. And what we bring as a campaign are real solutions. I'm the only candidate in this race that is not taking the money and therefore being corrupted by the lobbyists, the corporate interests, and I'm the only candidate that does not have a super PAC. So I'm the one candidate that can actually stand up for what it is that we the people need, as opposed to the others who are sponsored by the predatory banks and the fossil fuel giants and the war profiteers. I can actually stand up for what people want. And I should also acknowledge that in this race, this is an absolutely historic and transformative moment. We have a new mic, okay, great. Where, yeah, if you pull it, yeah, this side. There we go.
Oh, great, thank you.
Very good, okay, great. Thanks. So, I don't know if is that making a difference? I don't know if it makes a difference. Better, okay, all right, great. It's a historic election. This is really a realignment election. The news today was that the Arizona Republic, a Republican newspaper that has only endorsed Republicans for its 100-year history or so, just came out today and endorsed Hillary Clinton. We're seeing Republicans move lock, stock, and barrel into the Clinton campaign. So the Republican Party has sort of come apart at the seams, and the basic spokespeople, the infrastructure, the leadership of the Republican Party is now merging with the Democratic Party. We have one big, happy, corporate demo Republican Party, and the Democrats, meanwhile, have sort of split in two, having sabotaged Bernie Sanders' campaign. We're seeing so many progressives move out of the Democratic Party and look for a place to go. So essentially we've got a realignment a merger of the big corporate parties, whereas everyday people are looking for a politics of integrity and merging together with the Greens. So I want to give a big thank you also, not only to the Green Party that's been here for the long haul, but to the Bernie campaign and so many people from that movement who have refused to be silent, who have now merged together with the Green Party to form a whole new movement which has a grounding now in a political party that supports the revolution, that is not fighting the revolution as the Democratic Party was doing. So it's a whole new ball game, and as the only non-corporate candidate in the race, I have the liberty to stand up for what American people are clamoring for, and these are, by the way, the two most disliked and untrusted candidates in our history, with the highest numbers ever of rejection. The largest political group right now has actually walked away from Democrats and Republicans, who are now essentially minority parties, whereas independents and small parties are now some 40%, some say even more, of the electorate. We also have the news from the New York Times that 4 out of 10 voters are not coming out to vote given the choices of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. So we have every reason to stand up tall and to stand up proud and to insist on a future that we can live in. The Green Party alone is offering a solution to the crises that we face. Number one, we call for an emergency jobs program to solve the emergency of climate change. That is a Green New Deal, to create 20 million jobs, like in the New Deal that got us out of the Great Depression, but these are green jobs. We call for ending student debt. We bailed out the bankers on Wall Street who crashed the economy. It's time to bail out the young people who are the victims of that crashed economy. We call for free public higher education. It pays for itself. For every dollar we put in, we get back $7 in return. We call for a welcoming path to citizenship for the immigrants who have always been the engine of our economies, our culture, and our communities. We call for health care as a human right through an improved Medicare for all system that does not increase the costs of health care. They simply retrieve our health care dollars so that they support true health care, not profiteering by the health insurance and pharmaceutical companies. We call for an end to racist violence and violent policing. We call for an end to the war on drugs and to mass incarceration. And we call for, finally, a foreign policy based on international law and human rights, not these wars for oil that are bankrupting us, these regime change wars that have created failed states, mass refugee migrations, and worse terrorist threats, while they rob us of more than half of our discretionary budget is being spent on these failed wars, and half, approximately, of your income taxes are going to pay for it. The American people don't know that. They deserve to know that as they listen to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton talk about magnifying, further increasing our military budgets and increasing our wars and our conflicts around the world. So there is a way forward that puts people, planet, and peace over profit. We are the solution to that way forward. We encourage people, forget the lesser evil, fight for the greater good, like our lives depend on it, and we can do that knowing, in fact, that we do have the power. Consider this one issue alone. On the issue of student debt, there are 43 million young people and not so young people who are trapped in student loan debt, because once you get in, you really don't get out. It turns out that number, 43 million, is enough to win a three-way presidential race. This is the news of the day that the political establishment is quaking in their boots that people should learn about. Because if word gets out to millennials who are already looking at a third party vote, a majority of millennials are seriously considering voting third party, according to recent polls. If that news gets out, we could see a complete turnaround in this election. Instead of splitting the vote, we could be flipping the vote and creating an America and a world that actually works for all of us, that puts people, planet, and peace over profit. With that, I will give you a big thanks for your kind attention and turn it open to the press.
If the press have any questions, please feel free. Thank you.
Dr. Stein, have you seen anything in the debates that has made you change your opinion of the major party candidates at all?
I think the debates have confirmed exactly why Americans feel like they have been thrown under the bus by these two candidates. How did they spend their debate time? You know, debating where Barack Obama was born and exactly who said what when about it. They spent time debating who's the greater crook, you know, whose foundation was more of a ripoff to the American people. They spent time debating who took what position about Iraq when. Their debate was about them. The American people need a debate that's about the issues that are deciding whether we have a future or not. We did not hear a discussion about climate change. Yes, Donald Trump does not believe in climate and Hillary Clinton gives it lip service. However, Donald Trump supports coal. Hillary Clinton supports fracking. Coal is on its way out. It's no longer economically viable, but fracking, unfortunately, is here as long as our political leaders allow us to be thrown under the bus. And I understand that Florida has just been made opened up to the devastation of fracking, as if your water supply wasn't at risk enough right now as it is. We did not hear a debate about what these fossil fuel policies of both these candidates mean for us. And we did not hear a discussion about the emergency we face of climate change, which is in fact barreling down on us right now and really requires an emergency solution. We didn't hear a word about that. We did not hear a debate about their war policies. Both of them are warmongers. Hillary Clinton has a track record for it. There's no more catastrophic an event than what happened in Libya. Hillary Clinton wants to start an air war over Syria with a no-fly zone, which basically means we're going to war with Russia, a nuclear armed power. And we, between the two of us, have 2,000 nuclear weapons on hair trigger alert. We didn't hear a word about that potential for war. We didn't hear a word about their policies, about the failed catastrophe of this war on terror that's creating more terror. We didn't hear about an alternative which would actually deny terrorism the weapons that it requires to fight these wars, that would deny them the funding that they receive from our allies, in fact, to keep this terrorist movement going. We got this crazy war started, we and our allies. We can stop it by depriving ISIS and other terrorist groups of the weapons, of the arms, of the training, and of the reinforcements that are coming across the flow of immigrants. We can work with Turkey, our NATO ally, to close its border to the flow of militias, of terrorist militias as well. So the long and short of it is, in this election, we're not just deciding what kind of a world we will have, but whether we will have a world or not going forward. We did not hear a word about the real crises we are facing.
I think Bradenton Herald had a question. Go ahead.
So you alluded at the beginning of your talk kind of about what happened in Mosaic and Mulberry. Can you expand a little bit about your thoughts about what happened?
Yes, so my understanding is that essentially a sinkhole developed underneath this massive toxic waste site from the phosphate mining. At the same time that company is seeking another major permit to actually expand its mining. And in fact, there was supposed to be a hearing on that permit, which I understand was canceled because the company realized that the public gets now what it means to have this expanding industry. This is why, and let me just be clear, that hundreds of millions of gallons of this toxic waste have now poured into the aquifer that provides the drinking water. This is, this is pretty catastrophic. And It's going to be tough to deal with, but above all, as a first measure, we need to ensure that this dangerous industry is not expanded. And then we need to begin phasing it out and cleaning it up. Because in fact, the phosphate, as I understand it, is largely used for fertilizer. Well, what other problems do we have from fertilizer? Fertilizer is actually running off into our major water bodies all over the world and killing them, rendering them dead zones basically, and contributing to the crisis right now in our oceans as well as in our fresh water, as well as in aquifers around the country as well. In our Green New Deal, we call for not only 100% clean renewable energy and the jobs, the emergency jobs to make that transition. We also call for an emergency transition to a sustainable food system, which means that we no longer need to be creating these toxic waste sites and poisoning our water with phosphate. So this is part of a very broad transition, which unfortunately we must undertake on an emergency basis so that we're protecting our water supplies at the same time they are shrinking and they are put at risk not only from phosphate mining, but from fracking and from pesticide runoff and from climate change and global warming. We have a massive water crisis around the world. And we need to stand up and defend our water, to defend our oceans, to defend the economy of Florida, which ultimately depends on preserving the ecosystems here and the beauty of Florida, which is really the basis of the tourist economy here. So this is a win-win, but we've got to get ahead of the curve here. We have to get ahead of the dangers that are now coming home to roost. We need to start this transition quickly, and we need to support our green candidates, not only at the high levels. We also have a candidate here running for local office as well. Jeff, your last name again? Neff. Okay.
I'm running for the Sarasota County Charter Review Board, District 2.
Great. Thank you very much.
And Rob will be delivering remarks right after this is over too. We've got two last questions from the press, please. Who are you with?
WWPR.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. And then SNN will be next. Thank you.
How do you feel about Bernie Sanders telling people to support Hillary?
Well, Bernie made it clear from the start that he is a party animal, and he has been part of the Democratic Party as long as he's been in DC. And he's kind of got those blinders on when you become a part of the insider culture in DC. But he made it clear from the start that that's what he was going to do. So there are no surprises here. He's a team player. He's declared his team. He happens to be on the wrong team for the vision that he has for a sustainable, just, and healthy, and democratic world going forward. That's not going to happen. It's been amply demonstrated. He and his campaign did everything right, and they were sabotaged from the inside, as clarified by those emails that were leaked from the DNC. So the Democratic Party has a history of doing this. Anybody with their eyes open could have seen this coming had you been a real student of the Democratic Party, because what they did to Bernie, they did to Dennis Kucinich, they redistricted him. They did it to Howard Dean and created this concocted PR scheme, the Dean Scream. They did it to Jesse Jackson and created a PR smear campaign against him too. So it's pretty clear that you cannot have a revolution in a counter-revolutionary party. I think Bernie has done us an incredible service by bringing the injustice and the predatory counter-revolutionary character of the Democratic Party into the light of day for everyone to see and to witness. And I think, as Bernie said, it's a movement, it's not a man. And it's a tribute to all of Bernie's supporters that have carried on, that you refuse to be silenced, that you are standing up and you are not falling victim to this fear campaign. And let me just say briefly about this fear of spoiling the election. There is a solution here, which the Greens have been pushing for decades. It's called ranked choice voting. It allows you to vote for your #1 candidate, knowing if your candidate loses, your vote is automatically reassigned to your #2 candidate. The first time I ran for office in my home state in Massachusetts in 2002 for governor against Mitt Romney. We filed that bill to allow ranked choice voting, to ensure that there would be no unexpected consequences of voting your values. Because if you don't vote your values, you create a moral vacuum. And look what happens. You know, how's this lesser evil thing working out for us? All the reasons we were told to vote for the lesser evil is exactly what we've gotten. The expanding wars, the meltdown of the climate, the offshoring of our jobs. Voting for the lesser evil just paves the way to the greater evil. So the solution is ranked choice voting. The Democrats could have passed it in my home state in that election in the blink of an eye. They had 85% of the legislature, they still have it. That bill has been refiled for most of the last 16 years. They won't let it out of committee. Why is that? They rely on fear. Why do they rely on fear? Because they know they are not on your side and they cannot earn your vote because they take their marching orders from their big money sponsors. So the fact that they cannot earn your vote, that they rely on intimidation, and they work to keep you trapped in a politics of fear, that alone tells you they do not deserve your vote and means that voting for them is an absolute dead end. It is a race to the bottom between the greater and lesser evil. It is not going to get easier to fight our way out of this disaster. With each passing year, the Democratic and Republican parties become more captured by the fossil fuel giants and the war profiteers and the big banks. They become big money parties more than ever. They are both marching to the right, becoming more corporatist, more imperialist, and more militarist. So it's not going to get any easier to stand up. If we want to get ranked choice voting, we have to show that we are not going to be intimidated. We are here to stay. If they wanted right now, the Democrats could pass that on an emergency basis. They could reprogram the voting machines. They could do it right now in time for the November 8th election. They have time to pass an emergency measure. They could do it in every Democratic state that's afraid of a split vote. They could pass that bill right now. It's the bill is posted. A model legislation is posted on the a website of Fair Vote, and any people out there who do not have the courage of their convictions, but who want to vote green but are afraid to vote green, I say get 1,000 of your friends together and go mob your legislature. Go occupy their offices and insist that we liberate our democracy. And I encourage people to take the same stand about debates. In America, we not only have a right to vote, we have a right to know who we can vote for. And the American people are clamoring for open debates that include all 4 candidates. 76%, according to latest polls, want to open a debate. And what happened in the last debate only confirms why we need a full and fair debate of the real issues before us as the American people.
Okay, last question from
My
SMers.
question was answered.
Okay, thank you. Do any other press have any questions today? We're all set? Okay, thank you so much for coming, guys. Really appreciate it, and thank you for our meet and greet folks. Thank you so much for your time. We're thrilled to have you here. Thank you.
So I guess we have a short 10-minute break, and then I'll meet you in there. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to close down. I'll open up again at the next session.